Yes, man, we are live. Facebook, namaste. God bless. How are all of you? Hi, guys. It's Saturday, man. It's Saturday, and I got my coffee, and I got all my stuff, and I got papers, and then I got me. So, come you guys join me. I had a great, and I say this, God, the story didn't even come out yet. That's part of one of my words today. That something happened to me yesterday. It really brought me back to earth on a lot of things. We get an hour for lunch at work, and which is great. We get an hour for lunch, and I have a chance to run my errands in between because by the end of the day, after 10 hours, I'm jacked. I'm out. Everybody knows me like, leave Jerry alone. And and the Berlin Turnpike is right near me. And obviously, you guys know from my stories, I used to live down there, man. Oh yeah. The Motel 6 for a good decade. Oh my God. But there was one point when I was going to see my girls yesterday. I had to run over there and do some stuff. There was one point where I came to an intersection, and there was this guy on a bike. Man, he was going through the intersection really slow and really stopping traffic. And I said, Meatball, hurry up. And I said, wait a minute. That was the same route I used to go on a bicycle when they took my car. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, because at that time, I lived on one end of the pike, and my work was all the way on the north side, 9 miles away. And I had to ride the bike there every day, back and forth, after working all those hours. And it brought me back to life because I even remembered one moment when the weather was big raindrops were hitting my head, man, going on that bike. And for some reason it rained Monday through Friday. Every day it rained. I was get soaking wet before I went to work. And it was all through that time that the story I was telling myself at that time wasn't exactly the best story you should be telling yourself. I said, look at me. People were throwing shit at me. They're making fun of me. All these things in life. And that just kept perpetuating for a long time. I think that was 2013. That just kept growing in my situation in life. And if you guys, and if there's something more important that I could tell you today is the mind does not know from fiction from reality. Remember that. Your mind doesn't know fiction from reality. So imagination is awesome. So wherever you are, whatever you're going through, if you can put your mind right, and I'm going to get to a story about that, if you can get your mind right, you can create the most beautiful things. You can overcome the most amazing circumstances, but you got to understand, what story are you telling yourself every single day? The minute you wake up, the minute you wake up, good morning, what's wrong with me? Or good morning, what an amazing day it's going to be. Does that make sense? So I'm going to get to the quote box today because I got a lot of shit and stuff like this. When you realize that your mind doesn't realize the reality in life. It doesn't realize fiction in life. So whatever you tell yourself, your story about either your past and or your present, your mind is going to react to that. Does that make sense? And those little atoms are going to start connecting in your life, and good shit's going to come. Or the latter of that. Remember that. And this is what I kept telling myself, riding up and down the Berlin Turnpike. I had to keep doing it and doing it. I laugh about it now, but I can honestly say it was the most down. The lowest, man, there wasn't even a bottom feeder, man. I was below the bottom feeder of life, man, literally at that point. Literally looking for money to buy a cheeseburger. I can laugh about it now, but I had to remember at that incident yesterday, and I could smell the rain. And this is what I mean. I was creating the reality of where I was. Instead of where I was right then. Instead of, wait a minute, I got this abundant life. Look, I got time to go to my girls. There was one point for months I couldn't even go see my girls. I had no transportation. I couldn't get there, man. So thank God that my oldest was actually paying for my phone at that time. But when I started journaling and understanding that if I created this story about the life that I want to create, which I'm living right now, in the most beautiful way, then I can change anything, man. So I have the quote box after this long banter today. Shit, and a lot of stuff today, guys. Sorry. Change your story, and you change your destiny. And a word that's not in there is repeatedly. What do you say to yourself again and again, every single day? There's a great story about a couple heroes from 9/11 that I watched last night. In regards to the story, everything kind of perpetuated. That's how my life is. Things just follow in place. I love it. I love attracting it. But what do you change your story and you change your destiny? What are you repeatedly, again and again, telling yourself? And repeatedly, I got to watch. There's a lot of syllables in there. I'll start spitting all over the place, man. Synonyms of constantly, continually, and often. This is the question you got to ask yourself every day. No matter what has happened, no matter what you're going through, what are you telling yourself? Because if I took out a journal right now, and if you open any page, it's a story about where I want to be. And that's what I condition my mind to every day. Even though it may not be here, but in essence, it is here because I feel it in my mind. This is the game you got to play. This is the mind game. You got to condition yourself to every single day, guys. The next word is story, in account of incident. Hence, any incident, whatever has happened or whatever you can create in your mind. And if you live in that story, which most of us do or did, and you understand where you were or where you're going, it's an amazing. And this is the beauty of the mind. You can put yourself anywhere. You literally can put yourself anywhere. And if you let life control that amazing function that we have, this frontal lobe of creation that we can send out, it's going to store it in your subconscious. Does that make sense? Who the hell wrote this, man? Listen to this. From Robert Collier, 100 some odd years ago. The guy knew his stuff, man. I love his work. I've been getting really into his work in a lot of ways because I want answers. And most importantly, I want information. And I can share with you meatballs every day. It just makes a lot of sense, guys. So listen, Robert said, any thought that is passed onto the subconscious, starts here, goes there, often enough, is convincingly enough, is finally accepted. You keep telling yourself, and I'm going to get back to his last thing in the sentence, you keep telling yourself where you are, you're going to create only from that are. You remember that, guys. He goes on to say, see things as you would have them be instead of where they are. Does that make sense? It's you just using the imagination that we were told not to use when we were kids. We were told you can never have that. You can't do that. You can't be anything. And what scared me the most growing up was, any of you guys up in the echelon of age like I am, you remember getting home from school and you saw the hourglass. Your mom was watching the Sands of Time, that soap opera. I forgot what the hell it is. The Days of Our Lives. There you go. I get a trigger. And that music still rings in my head. I get home, my veins pop out of my head when I used to hear that stuff. But what scared me was time. I can remember, we were seeing that hourglass and time. And Bob Proctor said an amazing thing regarding that, how should we say, the sands of time, that hourglass that we've been known to love and or dread in our life. But he mentioned the fact that, and to spend your time now thinking about what happened there is to make it absolute certain that the future is going to be the same as the past. He's just defining what Collier said about the subconscious mind, about putting yourself where you want to go or where you've been. And whatever story you hold every day. That's why I journal every day, guys. I'm not sitting here just writing down affirmations of flubness. That's a word? I don't even know if that's a word, guys. I'm writing down the story I'm creating for myself. And not just gratitude. And as I looked by that guy yesterday on that bike, I felt every emotion that he was going through. It's like now, if you guys go up the Pike and you know this area in central Connecticut, the Pike is just full of people who are with their hands out, looking for something, looking for an escape from where they are, and they think money's going to do that. I thought about that too. That's why I used to go searching Walmart parking lots for quarters and dimes, man. I thought money would change everything in my life. It didn't. It fed me for a moment. It took care of what I needed to do, but until you get your mind right, this is the beauty of this story I'm going to tell you about now. I'm not a fan of Nicolas Cage, his work. I mean, I'm just not. I like the guy. I don't know him, but I like the fact that he's such a creative guy. But last night when I was writing the definitions and the subject content for this show for America's Mentor, World Trade Center was on. He played this sergeant in the Port Authority bus terminal. They had a facility down there in NYC during September 11th. And him and I guess 6 other guys were called up to head down to the World Trade Center. It was up to those guys to get up to Tower 1 to rescue people. In the process, they got down there, they got the 6 guys, the 5 guys plus him. They got down there, they were in the middle of the concourse in between 1 and 2 when building 2 started to fall. Him and 2 other guys were the only ones that made it to an elevator shaft. Therefore, they ended up falling which actually protected them, the shaft itself. And they were actually fine. They were compacted, but they weren't really hurt. So during that time, they were trying to figure out a way out and everything else, but they were stuck. They couldn't really move, but they weren't really hurt. Okay, fine. And during that whole time, Nicholas is telling them, get your mind right, get your mind right, get your mind right. This is actually a true story, but it's a great story of a perseverance of where they are to where they wanted to go. Okay, fine. They've been there, 20 minutes. Then they hear rumbling. Tower 1's starting to come down. And now they got first 100 stories on top of them. Now they have another 100 stories coming down on top of them as well. What happened from there was that's when everything started to get compacted. That's when their legs started breaking. That's when the arms started getting crushed. That's when the third man, who was actually free, who they told to stay there, because he could have climbed out, but they begged him to stay, got crushed and got killed. Now they're compacted, they're hurt, and they're sitting there for hours now at the same time with nothing else to do except talked about what they're going to do when they get out. And they kept reiterating that, they had to keep themselves awake. So for hours and hours and hours, even then, Building 7 comes down. I think it's Building 7, that large structure that they had there. Compacted them even more, crushed them even more. They kept going, they kept believing they were going to get out, and they spoke the whole time for hours and hours on the fact of what they wanted to do when they got out. It kept them alive. It kept them to the point, and he kept telling these guys over and over again, even before the other one was sadly taken away, keep your mind right. That's what I'm asking you guys to do. First off, check out the movie. It's astounding. It'll give you goosebumps on perseverance, because we're sitting there saying, I don't have enough money. Meatball, they had 200 stories sitting on top of them, and then some. And they were completely crushed in this tomb of cement that killed thousands of people. Think of your life right now, the openness, the freedom, the ability of you to change anything you want, but you got to get your mind right. You got to start with that process of being that self in mind. Nothing's going to fix it out here until you fix it in your mind. And that was the hardest thing for me to understand, because being conditioned to watch the hourglass and the pressures of time, guys, we create our own time. It's an amazing analogy of life. It's an amazing analogy of self. It's an amazing analogy that you can put in your mind whatever you want. And if you repeatedly focus on that continuously, you are going to create the most amazing story. Therefore, you're going to start feeling that amazing story. You're going to start projecting that amazing story. And most importantly, you're going to attract that amazing story. Guys, have an awesome Saturday, man. I got to get to work, man. 2,000% increase on Instagram because of the reels, guys. You're friggin' awesome. I love all of you, and as well as on YouTube. So I'll give the plug: America's Mentor _radio on Instagram, at America's Mentor on Twitter, at America's Mentor on YouTube. Guys, you have the power, man. Don't let life kid you. Please don't. For your own benefit, whatever you're going through, you're going to get through. Whatever you're doing, you're going to be. Remember that. So be something special, Meatball. You got to get out there, man. You got to remember that you can get over anything. You can be anything. You can have anything, but it starts in your friggin' mind. Work on that today, guys. Have an awesome Saturday, guys. I'll see you guys soon.